time for the next iteration of the Mealworm Farmer's Salary series. A really good friend of mine asked me a question recently, and I want to tie it into what I'm thinking about employees. So he asked, basically, like, what did I think, or what do I think, assuming artificial intelligence, AI, is successful in a positive way, not so much like Terminator, end of days type scenario, but in a replaces a lot of what we do today. So assume that is successful. How do I envision interaction occurring? What are humans going to do? Is universal basic income, UBI, like how does that factor into my thoughts? And from a small business perspective, what do I think about that? And so one of the things that I've thought and that I've started trying to piece together in my head, I worked in corporate for 17 years. And having run my business 100% doing that for the last 2.5 years, I feel like it feels wrong of me as the owner of my small business to pay myself more than my employees. It feels wrong to extract value from them, whether that be physical, mental, things that they, processes that they build. It feels wrong to pay myself more. And over the years, what I've seen other people say about that is, well, you're the owner, you're taking the risk, you're the one, doing the high level work. And I'm just really starting to feel like if I sit at a computer and come up with ideas, or I post a video of me doing something, how is that from a value perspective more monetarily higher than if somebody is in the insect room sweating their butt off, moving trays around, sifting, harvesting, grabbing pupa, like all these things that we do in there. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around paying myself more than folks that would work for me. And so, like right now, I don't have anybody on payroll. I have random help every now and then, but it's just me in there. But when I've had folks on payroll, it just didn't feel good to pay them less than I would pay myself. So I started thinking about that, and this question from this really good friend of mine got me further down the path. So thinking about like universal basic income, basically, like everybody's going to get a certain amount of money just for existing and being born. And the intent there is that we have to have a way for people to be able to buy the things that they need, even though we won't need to do the work that we currently are doing that earns us that money. And so an interesting scenario would be, I'll equate it to the mealworm farming scenario, is at a high volume level, you're using robots and automation and software and very few humans to raise millions upon millions upon millions of insects. And to do that with just physical humans would be astronomically huge from a work perspective. And so those folks that would have been working in there aren't anymore. And so imagine that across everything. And so that's where universal basic income comes in, to make sure that people can get the things that they need to get. And then assuming AI is successful in a positive way and does good things for humans, and we do good things with it, what does that look like? Like, are we still going to work? And what I found from my personal experience is that I find a lot of fulfillment in the physical things that I have to do. So today, for example, I did day 9 of my Getting Organized series, and I don't like to clean and organize. It drives me nuts. I've been very unsuccessful at it in the past, and so I avoid it. And the front part of my building has just turned into a disaster as a result, and so I want to fix that. And what I'm finding is that as I complete these things that are painful to do, because it is me acknowledging that I have done, like I'm still finding blown in insulation from when I put the insulation in the top. I'm finding pieces of that I never cleaned up. And that, I feel bad about that. But then once I'm done and I look at that, it feels really good. It feels really good when people reach out and say, I got my mealworms and my reptiles are able to eat, or my chickens are super happy they got this treat. It's not like mealworms are saving the world. I'm not feeding the hungry humans yet. But I feel good about being able to do that. It feels good to help people when they have problems. I've got a couple people this week that are having issues with shipping. I'm not the postal service, but I'm trying to help. And it feels good when we solve that problem, or I'm able to do what I can. And so what I'm finding is that this fulfillment is something I haven't felt in a while. I felt it during several of the years that I worked at corporate, implementing pharmacy software. And then as things progressed, it wasn't the same. And so now I'm finding that it's the physical stuff that I do feels really good. And I don't know why. I'm sure there's some science behind that somewhere. But what I'm hoping, we're assuming positive AI stuff here. I'm going to assume positivity as well, and that I would hope that people start to do those things because they feel fulfilled, and it impacts them positively, and it impacts their family and their community around them in a positive way. And the feedback we get from that helps to continue to drive people to, we could have a robot that's moving all these wheat bran bags that I have, or I can do it because I need to move my body and stress my body and use it for what it was meant to be used for, and what it's built to be used for. And I really feel like that's going to be a hard thing for a lot of people to get to, because we are so, right now in the U.S. specifically, is the context within where I'm talking, we are so brainwashed is a bit too far. We all believe very much so that we have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. We have to give away our time in exchange for money in order to live the life we want to live in the future, instead of doing it now. And I don't fault people for that. I don't think people are wrong. I think a lot of it is the culture that we have and the things that are in place that drive that. I think fear is an enormous motivator. And as I've started to engage outside of the U.S., specifically around mealworm-related things, what I'm finding is that folks in Europe, China, India, they are very open to talk and share ideas, and they're way further ahead than I am in what I'm able to find here. And so what I'm finding out is that, at first I was like, why are you telling me these things, right? Like in the U.S., as a corporate worker, I could not talk about the things that we were building, developing, doing had done, things that were successful, weren't. I couldn't talk about that with other people because we've been ingrained with that idea that if you give that away, we're going to lose. We're going to lose our financial edge. We're going to lose. And as I thought about it, what I realized is that folks outside of the U.S. don't have that fear because they have healthcare. They have their basic needs met. They have that safety net. That they don't have that sense of fear. And what they're doing is they are following what they're passionate about. And they don't care if they tell you everything about mealworms because they know that the likelihood of somebody being crazy enough to, use those ideas to start a mealworm business right next to them is basically zero, right? And so what I feel like to wrap that back into the UBI and the employees and stuff, like what I hope happens is that people start to experiment, start to have the luxury of experimenting with what it is that they find fulfilling and what their passions are, and not have that motivation be which thing gets me the most money, because that just taints the whole thing. The drive for what the monetary compensation is keeping people from doing the things that they really want to do or think they might want to do. They can't take the risk on that. And so I come from a huge place of privilege in the U.S. Because my parents were both well off and educated. My wife's parents were both well off and educated. Very strong family support system to help get through tough times, health issues, things like that. I am relatively healthy. I have not had a health emergency that has bankrupted me or my family. My family is healthy. And so I was lucky enough to get an amazing paying job. And I feel like to give myself a little credit and pat on the back, I did some safe things with what I earned that allowed me to take this giant risk and not put my family at risk from a financial perspective here in the U.S. And so I feel like it's so wrong of me not to use that to try to help other people or to try to prove out that as the owner of a business, call me whatever you want, CEO, chief, executive mealworm guy, whatever fancy title that people are using nowadays, I don't feel like that warrants me making 200 times somebody who's busting their butt, sweating their butt off with the mealworms. And so to wrap this then into the mealworm farmer's salary, the reason I don't have the salary that I could potentially have is because I'm paying other people. When I have them, I am paying them more than myself. And so in the scenario where that's not true, like right now I don't have anybody on payroll, right? I'm paying myself, and so my employees are not making more than me because I don't have employees right now. But what I'm doing is fine-tuning the processes. I'm in the process of expanding, and things are changing. Like I need to get a sifting machine, and that's going to completely change how we operate in there. And once I get that in there, once I understand how to do it, once I have worked through the preliminary, here's how we do it, and I get to a point where I'm scaling even more, I'm going to need people in there. And they will make more money than I do. It just feels wrong to extract value from people and keep it for myself because I had all the luxuries and opportunities that I had. And quite frankly, luck. Like, I could get hit by a truck on the way to town today. And so it's, I don't know. I think I hit everything in that question from my very, very good friend. But that's sort of my thoughts on employees. Where do I see that, the last one, I'm remembering now, like how do I see that impacting small business? I think that, and I hope, like I am not an expert. I'm really curious to hear feedback from people on this, but I really feel like it's going to transition to a scenario where people are going to start producing things that have societal value, whether that be arts, crafts, tools, things that people can make. Using the mealworm farm as an example, I am raising mealworms, fantastic protein source, and I can help feed the poultry and small mammals and reptiles around me. Now, you could argue, reptiles are a luxury. Okay, let's talk chickens then. Chickens help feed people. So chickens are going to lay eggs. It's been scientifically proven that chickens that eat insects produce better eggs. And so what I am able to do is, with my knowledge, skill set, processes, physical ability, mental ability, and desire and passion, I can go and raise these mealworms that turn into fantastic nutrient sources for chickens that then crank out fantastic eggs for people to be able to eat and nourish themselves with. In the future, I think mealworms and insects in general are going to play a bigger part in the human food chain because they are able to so very efficiently take things that we cannot consume and turn them into things we could. So just look at your kitchen scraps after one meal. Look at the food that goes bad in your refrigerator. An insect like a mealworm or a soldier fly larva can take that, eat it, thrive, do fantastic, turn it into protein in themselves, feed those insects then to chickens, and you've got eggs. And those nutrients out of the food that we wasted as humans can be utilized by those insects. So I think that's pretty far off in the U.S., to be quite frank, but someday, hopefully. So I think from a small business perspective, the impact is going to be that people will, an interesting way that's coming to mind to think about it is you go to a farmer's market and you buy a tomato from a farmer and you're going to pay $1 for that tomato. You could go to any big box grocery store and pay 20 cents for that tomato. But I guarantee you that the taste of that tomato is going to be 100% better when you're paying $1 for it. That dollar that you're paying that farmer is helping that farmer, not some CEO that's making 200 to 300 to 400 times their lowest paid worker in that business. I think people will start to transition to that. I think bartering and trading is actually going to become a bigger thing. All the talk about cryptocurrency and some of the things that are happening with the financial system and money within the U.S. I think bartering is going to be something that people are going to do more often. It happens now. I'm not saying it doesn't. And I do want to stress that the folks that are going to the big box stores and buying 20-cent tomatoes, that isn't wrong in the context of, if that's how you can feed people around you, then that's what you need to do. Because we have built a system here in the U.S. that sometimes warrants needing to buy the cheaper things. Because we don't have those safety nets. We don't have those things. But we've got a lot of really cool jets. Anywho, I think I hit everything in that text. This was a lot longer than I was anticipating. But I wanted to walk through it and think a bit about it. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, and I'm curious to see too. Like it's very grandiose and boastful of me to sit here and say that I'm going to pay my employees more than myself. Let's see if that happens, right? Like it's happened to date. Let's see if it continues to happen, and what transpires if that changes. Right? Like in a year, if somebody in my immediate family is needing treatment of some kind and I need to pay for that, context may drive me to do something different. Fear may drive me to do something different, right? So I'm not sitting here saying I'm amazing and perfect and going to do this. I hope that I will, and let's see what happens. But curious to hear your thoughts. Feel free to put them down below comments, shoot them to me in an email, whatever works best for you. Looking forward to it, and thank you much.